Who made you scared to try something? Who made it so wrong that if you don't get it right the first time, you should be embarrassed? You should be disappointed. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Money Markets and Mindset Podcast. Whether you are watching this live on YouTube or tuning in across all the streaming platforms, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, you name it. Thanks for tuning in and checking us out. Hanging out with Antonio and Michaela from the team again today. How you guys feeling?
Doing good.
Great. Yeah.
Everybody's doing great. We'll take it. We'll take it, right? It's a new year. I like it. We're already feeling great. So what we wanted to talk about today, which is a very interesting topic because it's about fear around placing your first trade. And what happened was I was talking to some of our members who a few members called and was like, I've been in here for a year, and I'm not going to say any of their names. Well, it was one person in particular. I'm not going to say the person's name because I don't want them to think every time they call me, it ends up on a podcast or on YouTube or something like that. But the big picture was, I'm like, you've been here for a year. How come you haven't made a trade? And she basically went on to say, like, I'm just afraid. I'm afraid to pull the trigger. I'm afraid to press the button. And I mean, there was a lot of roundabout stuff, but as I kept digging and chiseled down to like the real issue was just like, I'm just afraid to pull the trigger and buy a stock. And I'm thinking like, wow, this is interesting, right? Because, there's one hurdle where you're like, as a course creator, as a content creator, as a trader myself, I'm like, how can I help people? That's always what's first on my mind, right? We don't sell our program and then get excited if someone doesn't make their first trade. It's like, that's not what we're here to do. I'm like, I need you making trades. I need testimonials. I need you explaining that this worked for you, which is probably counter to how most people think. Most people think course creators, and some course creators are all about the money and they don't really care. But the majority of us, we actually want you to make trades. We actually want your success story. We actually want you to email us and say, I made my first trade. I made $1,000 so that we can then take it and see like, hey, this person did it. They're a normal person. So most of the times we want that ordinary average person to have success, and we want them to tell us about it because we want to share it with the world, because people get tired of hearing our story, or sometimes they don't resonate with us no more because we have graduated past that beginner level. And sometimes people think like, oh, he's this far. But the point is, I talked to her. It was all about fear. And I thought about how many people are not placing their first trade because of fear, because of, they're scared to make the trade. And where I was going with this is we create these courses and these programs like, all right, I'm going to teach people how to trade. I'm going to lay it out in the course. I'm going to give them a checklist, everything. And then you have a new problem. They buy the course or they buy the program. And then you got some people who don't go through the program. So now you're like, well, how do I help those people go through the program? And then you get those people who go through the program, and then you hit another hurdle. It's like, I went through it, but I never placed a trade. So now we're constantly like, well, now how do I help the people who buy it go through it? How do I help the people who go through it actually place a trade? And we're always kind of chiseling down, trying to figure out how we can help. And I want to say at some point, you got to help yourself too, right? I mean, you got to show up, you got to participate. So if you're on the outside, you don't know how to trade, you got to show up and purchase your first course. Or, like us, we have a free course. If you're a beginner, well, it's really a paid course, but we're for a limited time letting people take it for free. And if you want to take that course for free, you can text us at 313-251-2260 and text the word BB or the letter BB for take our beginner basics course. But it's like, at some point you got to take the beginner basics course. At some point you got to take your next paid course. At some point you got to show up from that and even place your first trade. And so I thought we could all talk about like, what was it like placing our first trade, or even before we placed our first trade? So what do you guys think about that? Who wants to kick it off? What were you thinking before placing your first trade?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a great topic because I think that is the first initial step. So either way, Antonio, if you want to go first, it's totally fine.
Yeah, sure. For me, I kind of have like two beginners for me because I opened like a Robinhood account when I was younger and put $1,000 in and went random with it. It was before I knew anything. And I just bought like I was kind of I didn't do it probably the most smartest way, and I wasn't as fearful. I'm maybe a little more unorthodox. I just went in and bought some stuff and quickly realized that I have no idea what I'm doing. Stuff was going up, stuff was going down. I was like, I don't know why these stocks go up or down. I just felt like it was so clueless to why I was purchasing, why anything was going the way it was. So for me, my first experience placing trades was kind of just random.
So before we go to Michaela, let's dive into that though. Like, what were you feeling when you play? Like, because it's very interesting that you place a trade knowing nothing, and it's like I'm just getting in the game. So like, what was either your level of fear or lack of fear for why were you just like I'm doing it, I'm getting in? So what was either the fear or the lack of fear that made you just jump straight in?
Well, really, I wanted to test it out. I know the power. I knew the power of investing. I guess I'll start there. Is I've seen people invest and make money, and I just knew that it was a possibility. It was a way to grow. I've heard about these things, but the whole idea of investing was very foreign to me because none of my parents, none of my family, like it just wasn't common. No one invests in my family. No one had anything going like that. And so me and my brothers all were like, oh, let's download Robinhood and see how it goes. We each put like $1,000 in. It was more of just like a fun game for us, like getting started, which is a terrible way to look at it, but it got us in the game. But then what it really does is it starts to challenge you because then I'm like, okay, I bought companies just the way I chose my stocks was like, oh, I've heard of this company before. Oh, I've heard of that. Like I just picked stuff I recognized and then bought into it. But then it really quickly makes you realize like I don't know why. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, sometimes it takes forever for it to do anything. And that made me really think like there's got to be more to this because I feel like my account is going nowhere, slightly down, slightly up. I was like, this isn't getting me ahead. I don't know how this is working for other people. So for me, that's where I was and how I got started. Like, I know there's more to this. But jumping in initially, it was probably a lack of fear and a lack of, just knowledge. I just kind of went in going for it. But I only had $1,000 in. So for me, it was just like a trial to see how it worked.
But what's interesting though is there's people who take like the course and the information and they're still scared to place a trade. You didn't take a course, didn't have any training, and you're like, I'm getting in, right? So why well, let me ask you this. Maybe this will resonate with people. Why weren't you afraid of losing $1,000? Or did you just come in thinking like, I'm sure I'm gonna, were you so naive that you just knew you thought you were gonna make money and the thought of losing it didn't even cross your brain? Or did you come in saying, I know I could lose 1,000, but I don't care. I just want to play around with this and see how it works?
No, to me, actually, what I had thought or my understanding of the stock market is like old school, like buy and hold. Eventually, the market goes higher. That was my only thought about the market, and so I said, I'm just buying. I knew nothing about options at the time either. All I knew how to do was just buy stocks and sell stocks. So my strategies weren't very unique, or I didn't know how to play the market actually. So my whole like thought process was, if I buy $1,000 worth of random stocks and I hold on to them, even if they fall down. I said, I'm at an age, I'm young enough I can hold this for 10 years in my Robinhood account. And I'm hoping that these should go up long term. So for me, yes, I could lose some money, but if I just hold on to it long term, I should hopefully bounce back according to my belief that the market goes higher long term. And that was basically the only like thought process I had about it. So that kind of took away some fear because I wasn't so worried about like my account's going to zero. It was like, yeah, I could take a hit. Maybe my account goes in half, but it's not a ton of money and it gets me experience. And if I hold long enough, it could potentially rebound. So that was my initial thoughts, I guess, getting in of why I wasn't so like, oh, this could be the end of my career. I was like, I'll get money back. Like, I was like, oh, I'll work. I still got a job. I can go back to work. I'll get another paycheck eventually. I can save up another $1,000. to me, it's a learning experience. And I appreciate the learning experience more than just never taking that risk, because the risk of not getting involved is more scary to me than getting involved and losing a few bucks.
Oh my goodness. Your story sounds more like mine, which I'll share mine last or after Michaela goes. But yeah, that's interesting. Cause like, first of all, you know, you were more worried about the experience than $1,000 of doing something wrong. And then number two, you had already earmarked $1,000 as like, it's gone for the next 10 years. Like, it wasn't like I got to pull this out in 6 months and pay a bill, or I'm using this for rent, so I need this back in 30 days. You kind of came in saying like, if it goes wrong, I'm willing to hold it for, I don't know, maybe 10 years and I'll worry about it then. So essentially, I like that mindset that you technically already spent the 1,000, like it was gone because you were willing to let it sit for 10 years, which kind of coincides with the old cliche, right? Don't invest what you aren't willing to lose. Because you could lose it, or it could be tied up for a long period of time, depending on the type of trading or investing you're doing. Michaela, what about you? Your first trade, your first investment, how'd you feel?
I'm glad we're talking about this because it was a completely different experience. And I think that's good because, you know, our listeners have different experiences and different fears, and you know, getting involved is very different for everyone. I got involved. I honestly did not know a lot about the stock market until I started working with you, Jason, as you know. So it never really was in the forefront of my mind. I don't know, maybe eventually it would, you know, I would cross paths with it, but happening to work in this industry, it was gaining this insight and knowledge. How could I not start, right? But my fear and holdback is because I had access to all this wealth of information. I thought I needed to know everything in order to start. And I do see a lot of our members that feel that same way. And I really resonate with that because you want to feel so good and so confident. And you can, but you don't need to know everything in order to do that. You can feel really good and confident in a few different things, especially, for example, chart reading. So it wasn't until I decided, you know, I know enough and a lot about how to read charts, and that's enough. And I can feel really confident in that I was able to place my first trade. And I also felt like this pressure, like I was this example working with you and everyone, like if it failed, it wasn't good and I couldn't fail and it had to be really good. And I definitely traded a little bit, like here and there. We were able to get some free stocks from Robinhood with our trading link. So I was kind of using that as a basis, but my first real trade actually didn't go as planned. But I entered it knowing that, and I mean, knowing that it could go slightly wrong and being okay with that. So I think that's another thing too. You may make some trades that don't go well, and that's okay. It's about losing small, as you teach us. And I remember going through it and knowing the chart and being like, okay, this is the point, you know, where we should get out to minimize loss. Unfortunately, I didn't follow that. I knew it though, but I didn't follow it. I was able to get to a point where I didn't lose, you know, horribly as much as I could have because of knowing how to read charts. But after that experience, I felt confident in order to do another one because I felt good that I had at least started and done something. And then to both of your points as well, making sure it's not money that you absolutely need. So you don't feel this pressure of like, it can't go wrong because if it does, I'll be destitute. And I think that's good to start with something small too. Like my account is very, very small considering, you know. So getting started with something, but that was okay. If it went down to zero, that's okay. Live to trade another day, right? So yeah, I think those are my biggest things, wanting to know everything, the fear of failure, and also just using what I didn't need. So those three things were like my hurdles to place that first trade.
I think your situation is interesting because you had pressure because you work for the company that your trade had to be the best. And I just wonder if that also translates to when members or people out there are like, I'm doing it. I'm taking the stock trading course, even though they
Right.
don't work for the company. I wonder how much pressure they probably feel from their friends and family, especially because your friends and family probably say something like, you do it first. You let me know how that works out for you, right? And people say these smart ASS comments sometimes, unbeknowingly putting pressure on you that who cares if I go first? So if I go first and I make $1 million, then you go be like, I should have joined you, right? If I go first and I lose some money, sometimes those people are like, see, that's why I want to see you do it first. But it's interesting. I wonder how much pressure people have from saying like, I bought this course, I got to prove to my husband, because my husband was like, you go spend that money on that, or my wife. How much pressure do they have that their first trade has to go correct, or else they feel like a failure? You had that pressure because you worked here, but who put that pressure on you?
Oh, definitely not you. That was totally
But, but,
self-induced.
but my point is, yeah, you put it on yourself, right? So
Oh,
like
100%.
the pressure is like unreal, because who cares? Who cares
Right.
that you work here? I mean, as
Right.
if working here is the recipe for like all successful trades. I guess everybody would try to get a job, right? Like, oh, just
There
work
you
there.
go.
Everything they pick turns
And
to
then you'll
gold.
never lose. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's true. That's true. But that's a great point. I think if members who are in the program, it's like, man, what I paid for this. I have a coach. My first trade should be the best, and I should win all of this, or however you may think. That's true. You may self-induce that pressure, which is why we recommend paper trading or practice trading first as well, to kind of get those first trades out of the way. But yeah, that could definitely be a source of pressure.
And then here's the other thing. So define your first trade didn't go as planned. Like, what does that mean? Like, your first trade didn't go as planned. What did that mean?
I purchased shares and it went up a little bit. And this was a while ago, so I honestly can't remember all of the details, but inevitably the chart started to decline. And it was at that moment, the I'm wrong level that we teach and talk about, I ignored. And then it just kept going. So I had to kind of wait it out until it turned around slightly. But I got out and cut loss. And again, I can't remember the exact details. It was a while ago.
So I'm just curious. I know you can't remember exact details. If you look back on that stock, is it up? Is it higher today than when you bought it a year or two ago, or whenever that was? I'm curious.
I don't know. I
Oh
can
man,
look.
can
I
you
can
look?
look. I'm
You
gonna look.
look. You look,
I'm
and
gonna
I'll
look
talk.
right now. That sounds
Here's the reason I'm asking that, right? Because you got Antonio who's saying like, I know eventually it goes higher, right? And that's the theory, like long term it goes higher. And then you got you who like, I bought my first investment and it didn't go as planned because it went down. And what I'm trying to gauge, I'm just curious between like, sometimes people believe because they bought it today, like, oh, I put my money in it, it better start going up tomorrow. Immediately, it's never going down again because I bought it today. Right. And like the stock market doesn't really care that you put your little $1,000 into it. Right. I mean, these are $1 billion market cap companies, and like we bought $1,000 worth. And like we're like a sliver of ownership, right? I mean, we're like 0.000000001% owner with our like 10 shares or 100 shares or
right.
whatever. And we believe that like, well, we bought today, it should start going up. And so I guess I'm thinking about that more in the sense like I think people have the investment game all wrong, and they tie words like it didn't go as planned or I'm not good at this because the stock didn't go up. The reality is you have no control of it going up or going down. What you do have control over, what you should be basing if you're good at this or not, is if you read the chart right, if you did some
Mm-hmm.
fundamental research, if you bought at the low risk time, and then you've also calculated how long you're willing to hold it to see if thought process was right? And then at what point is it worth revisiting your thought process and saying the story has changed around this stock? Maybe I should cut my loss. And so losing is part of the game. Like no basketball player says like, I joined the team, every game we should win from here on out. You might get drafted to the NBA, the NFL tomorrow, and the first game you play, y'all lose. No one says like, I don't know if this is for me. I got drafted. We lost our first game. But maybe because it has money tied to it. Everyone just gives money so much power, way more power than it is. Like, but if you lose your first game in the NFL, you don't lose $1,000. It's like, but why is $1,000 so powerful for you? Like you spend you will go in debt for a college degree that you may not use. I'm sure almost everybody at some point, well, there's some straight A students. I'm not one of them, but if you're like me, I took statistics like 3 times. So I paid it was something like $700 a credit. So I paid $2,100 times 3 plus the book. I kept the book for 2 semesters and they changed it to third semester when I had to take it again. So, I mean, I'm like $8,000 in on one class on the retake that I'll probably never use again. Right. But like, how come in that situation, I wasn't like, I just lost $8,000 on this class, I'm not going for the degree. Like, we don't do that. Or let me not make it about me. If you have a child, even if you don't have children, if you have a best friend or anybody that's in school, and even if you didn't go to school, even if you don't have kids, and your best friend's like, I flunked law school, or I flunked this one class, I really want to be a lawyer, or I flunked, I don't know, what do doctors study, like physiology or something, anatomy. I didn't pass anatomy class, right? There is no friend that goes to them and says, how much was that class? 2,000. Ooh, yeah. I wouldn't go take that again. You're not gonna be a doctor. You're not gonna be a lawyer. Like you lost 1,000 on that. How much was the book? An extra 600? Yeah, it's over. Go ahead and drop out. Like that's stupid, right? I mean, we're quiet and looking at the screen. Like no one would say that to their friend. No one. What would you say? That's okay. Take the course again. Oh, it's only 2,000. Think how much money you're going to make once you graduate, right? We come with all the pep talks. In the stock market, we'd be like, I lost 1,000. Your spouse be like, I don't know why you signed up for that course anyway. Right? You knew you wasn't no stock trader. Why'd you take so it's interesting the support we get around like foolish goals. And I'm not saying becoming a doctor or a lawyer is a foolish goal, but we are so supportive in some stuff that like has a salary cap, some stuff that you may or may not even enjoy doing by the time you get the degree. We're willing to go into debt for that. Then we come to the stock market. It's like, I'm about to put $1,000 in this trade. What if I lose it? Like it all of a sudden becomes the end of the world. Like, what does this mean about me if I lose 1,000? Well, what did it mean about you taking anatomy twice? Like, I don't know. It meant you needed to take it twice. It's like, what does it mean?
Oh, I like Antonio's attitude starting. He's like, he was investing in an experience. Even though he didn't have the knowledge yet, he's like, I'm going to learn from this experience. And I think that's maybe where we, get in our own minds sometimes that this won't be a learning experience. I learned a lot from that trade, from your first trade. No matter what, you're going to learn. And it's kind of like, it's just education. If you view it as you're investing in yourself and your experience.
It makes me think about college kids who like, I'm just here to party. Like they know they go get kicked out. They know they going in debt. They know they not getting a degree, but they like, man, I'm going to party this first year, second year until it's over. Right. Which is, maybe they'll make some really good stock traders. They're like, I'm just going for the experience. Right. And so maybe they'll make really great stock traders. But I was thinking about my story as well, which is a little bit different. because after I was talking to the young lady on the phone, I was thinking about like my experience, and I was like, man, how come I wasn't scared? I didn't have a course. I didn't have nothing when I first started. If you know my story, I took $2,000 to a bank. I'm like 18. I took some of my like graduation money and like, yeah, I want to open an investment account. And they were just like, why? I was like, because I want to be rich. Like, why else do people open these accounts? And so for me, and by the way, they lost $1,300 of my money, and I came back 2 years later to check on my account, and it was down to 700. And I'm like, man, give me the 700. I'll do this myself, right? So then I placed my second trade, or I should say, that was my first investment. But my first trade that I did on my own was I bought Sprint PCS because I worked for the company at the time, so I bought 100 shares there. But my point is, when I think back on why, I'm like, so what makes you so different, Jason? Why weren't you scared of losing $2,000? Some people were scared to lose 1,000. I said, why was I not scared of losing $2,000? And I truly believe it's because my upbringing was more scary than not trying this. Like, I saw my mom work 2 jobs as a single mother raising 2 boys. My mom worked her full-time job, and then she had a part-time job at Target. And like, I saw her go to Target every day after work. Like, I was like, I remember when she was like, I'm just doing this temporarily. Temporary turned into like 13 years or something, like a decade of like watching my mom go. My mom has I don't even know. I hope my mom don't listen. She'd be like, don't be telling my business. But my point, she was at Target so long, I think she got like a second retirement from Target. She was at 13, 15 years, something like that. How do you get a retirement from Target? I mean, it's probably not much, but like, that's how long she worked like a second job that was supposed to be temporary, right? And so I was like scared not to invest. I'm like, I could deal with losing $2,000. I can't deal with working a full-time career and then having to get a second one later on in life, or working them at the same time, retiring from one and then finishing up at a second one, and then eventually, quote unquote, retiring from that one. So like, the fear of not doing it was way greater than the thought of losing $1,000. And then I thought, when they lost me $1,300, I know maybe I'm different. I have an ego or something when it comes to that, but I didn't think like, if the professionals lost money, then I'm surely can't do this. I was like, man, if they lost money, I could have lost my own. I could do it myself. And so when I took the rest of the money and made my first quote unquote trade, even when I bought Sprint, I bought it at $5. I'm like, I just needed to go to 50 cents so I can make that $50 so I don't have to work weekends, right? When it fell down to $4, for a split second, I was like, what am I doing? This doesn't work. But after that kind of moment passed, right? Because we're all emotional human beings. When the stock went back up to 5, and then it fell down again, I realized at that point, like, it's not that it doesn't work. I have to find out how it works for me. Because I'm like, it worked for Warren Buffett. It works for Peter Lynch, all these guys you hear about. So I'm like, if it works for them and it works for so many other people, it's not that it doesn't work. It's like, how do I make it work for me? And then not putting the unrealistic expectations of that every trade or every investment should be a home run. And I think that's where people go wrong. And if I was to sum that up, I mean, I'd love to know what you guys think. I think it's more mindset than anything. Like, we've been switching from teaching so much about what's a stock, when to buy, when to sell. It's like, look, if people don't get their mindset right, like, don't matter how many courses we put out, like, they're going to be scared to place their first trade, right? I don't care how many times we do the demo on Monday night for 2 hours. I mean, we walk through the whole setup. This is the stock. Here's where we would buy. Here's why we like it. Here's the option. And somebody is still sitting behind their screen like, but I'm scared. And so it's like the mindset is what makes a person successful. And I start to realize, like, I would probably be successful no matter what I'm doing, because that's how I think. Like, I don't care if it's trading. I'm going to be like, how does it work? How to make it work for me? I don't care if it's internet marketing or YouTube. I'm going to be like, how do they make good videos? How do they make good podcasts? I don't care if I started a lawn care business. I'm going to be like, I'm going to collect all my people's email address, put them on an automated schedule, right? I'm going to set them up for direct deposit to pay me so I don't have to collect my, like, I just think big, or I just think different. I think, how do I make it work? How do I succeed? And then not if the first person closes the door saying, I don't want you to cut my grass. I'm not going to be like, this doesn't work, right? I'm going to probably come back a week later when there's grass 2 feet high and be like, I thought you was going to cut it. You sure you don't want me to hit it? Right? But my point is, I think a big part of whether you're going to succeed in the stock market or anything else is mindset. And I find most of the people who don't succeed here, I'm not saying people are not successful or good people in their careers, but when it comes to like entrepreneurial type stuff, money working for you, if you don't get the mindset down and stop looking at everything like, what are people going to say or think of me? And if I lose $1,000, what does this mean about me? Or if I lose 1,000 and I lose another 1,000, this doesn't work. It's like, you don't think Warren Buffett ever lost $1,000? Like, if I always say, if Warren Buffett quit after his first or second loss, then Warren Buffett is not a billionaire. Warren Buffett is no longer the great investor. Can you imagine Warren Buffett quit after a second loss? Then he's not Warren Buffett, because I'm sure he didn't make $1 billion on his second trade because he had to make it over a ton of different trades. And so people always like, I want to be a millionaire. It's like, great. You think you're going to make $1 million on your second trade or on your like 1,000th trade? And do you think you're going to have 999 successful trades? Like, you're never like, so what do you guys think about that from a mindset standpoint? I mean, am I off the mark, or am I driving down somebody's street?
No, I think that's good. I think it is a huge component is mindset. I also kind of have that same mentality of like, whatever you do, do it with your best. I always have a very optimistic mindset of like, it'll work out. And if it doesn't, it's okay. It's a learning experience to me. Something my dad always told me is like, you could lose money, but you won't lose the knowledge you've learned from the experience. Like he's always told me that, like,
I like your dad. I got to meet this guy.
Yeah, he's always told me that because, different things. He's like, you could lose your job, but you won't lose the knowledge you've learned from your job. You could go out and get another job like that or something, as long as you're learning and growing, which really like takes the stress or the fear away, because you're like, that's what's truly valuable. It's not that I flipped a few bucks here or there. If you have the knowledge to do it, then you can consistently do it time and time again. It don't matter if you have some hiccups along the way. So I agree. I think having the right mindset behind it really shapes who you'll be as a trader. And like you said, I think that's where people get stuck at, is you start comparing yourself to other people. You start thinking like, what are they going to say about me? Oh, so-and-so had a good trade, but I didn't, I think that's where a lot of the negative thoughts come in, is when you start comparing yourself to other people, how they are doing. Because the reality is too, they're in a different walk than you are. Maybe they had more education. Maybe they placed more trades, maybe whatever. And so you start doing this comparison game, you really can start beating yourself down and saying, this one trade didn't work for me. And then you start getting all these negative thoughts like, I don't think this is for me. I should get out. When really you should be looking at it like, what did I learn from this experience? What went wrong with this trade? Because the trades I've placed that actually like failed and did miserable, I look back at them and I'm like, why did I choose that? Why did I enter here or there? Like, I'll be like, what was I thinking? Because I've learned more since then. I'm like, oh man, that was a bad mistake. Now I can like learn from that mistake. And so I just think in having that right attitude of like being persistent with it, like you said, you're not going to hit a home run off the gate. There's so much you learn just by doing it. One thing that I feel like changes my mindset is when I had real money in the trade, I pay attention to that trade like no other. Yeah. Like I've paper traded and done some things and like, oh, it won, it lost, no big deal. And I don't like take it as seriously, or I'm not like, there's my wrong level, or there's this. But when I had real money in the trade, I'm like glued to it. I'm like, okay, it better do this. If it doesn't do this, then I'm doing this. Like I just pay attention more. And I think that really like emphasizes the learning behind it, because when you're in tune with it when you got money on the table, no matter how big or small. I had, a small trade and I'm like, it better go up or I'm going to lose $3. And it's like,
Yeah.
but for whatever reason, when I had some money in the game, it's like I'm focused. So I agree. I think getting past that mindset, those negative thoughts, comparison, and really focusing on what's your goal out of it. I think that's what's most important, because like you said, if you're persistent and don't quit, I think with the hard work you can get there. You just gotta be patient with it and then just have that right mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we're saying here too is loss doesn't mean failure. And I think everyone equates that. You lose money, you failed. And so looking at trading every step of the way is there's wins along the way. Even if you lose a little bit of money, like that first trade for me was a win. One, because I made my first trade. Two, I felt like I improved my chart reading skills exponentially, and that's a win. So it's like looking at these other steps as wins, and not just making your goal this tangible dollar amount, but also learning is a win, gaining experience is a win. These are all wins that you can focus on. And then the next time I entered a trade, you better believe the second, it was doing what I wanted to do, I was paying attention, just like Antonio said. Even if it's a small amount, you care so much. And I learned from that previous experience, okay, I'm going to take profit here because I'm not going to wait, or my I'm wrong level is here now. And I know to listen to it now because I learned that before. Even though it's like a small amount, still it matters. So just, shifting your mindset from failure equals losing a little bit. It's like, okay, but did you cut your loss? I think we talk about this all the time on our Monday night sessions with our members. I know people are like, oh, they're so focused on the small losses. Like, yeah, but imagine if you didn't know how to read the chart, you would have lost so much more. You cut your loss into a tiny little fraction. And that's a win too, because people are out there in the same trade. They don't know how to read the chart and their loss is going to be way bigger. So just getting the right education and then seeing all the wins along the way too, that may not be as tangible. That's my thought about it.
Yeah. And as we get ready to wrap up, I think people really need to ask themselves, I don't know if it goes back to people's childhood or what, which I'm so conscious of how we raise our kids. It's like, who taught you that trying something, who made you scared to try something, right? Who made it so wrong that if you don't get it right the first time, you should be embarrassed. You should be disappointed. At what point was that instilled in you? Like my daughter will do some stuff and I'm like, that ain't gonna work. But I'm like, go ahead, try it. Like I already know, like she about to waste some milk or something all over the carpet I already know it. I see it, but I'm like, but I never want to discourage her from getting that experience, which is what we kind of opened up with, the experience of making a mistake, the experience of trying. Cause I don't want her to get to a point where she's like, oh, I should do that, but I don't want to make a mistake. And that would break my heart more. I'm like, we can get more milk. We can clean the rug or whatever the case may be. But I don't want her to stop trying stuff, right? And my son, same thing. I'm like, he go fall off that. And I'm like, as long as he not going to get a brain aneurysm from hitting his head, I'll be like, let him fall. Right? Let him, as long as he falls on the carpet, Michaela laughing. But as long as on the carpet, I'm like, let him fall. Let him experiment. I don't want him afraid to climb. He might be the world's best tumbler someday or gymnast, but we will never know if we start programming in him right now. Don't do that. You might fall. That's a failure. And so I wonder where people, got that from. And I'm not even going to go down this rabbit hole of corporate America, but I really think corporate America, in our company, when you guys bring ideas, what do we normally say? Be like, try it out. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Would you guys agree? Or, for people who can't see the video, y'all shaking your head. But how do we run things when we want to experiment with something?
Yeah. One, it will be try it. And if it doesn't work, we at least tried it and learned. Or if it's just not the right time, it's we heard it and we'll try it later.
Antonio, when we spend money on ads, like we test stuff all the time. What do I say? I'd be like, well, test it with $1,000, right?
Yep. Yep. You don't know until you test it. That's what we do.
We never be like, unless we know absolutely this $1,000 ad spend is gonna get us new customers, don't spend it, right? Or like if you spend 1,000, like that ad didn't reach the right people, we don't be like, I guess we shouldn't do ads anymore. I mean, we only even do ads because we believe in what we're doing. And we're like, we got to let the world know that we exist so we can help them, even if it means some crazy person go leave a stupid comment on the post, tired of seeing these ads or tired of seeing all these fake stock gurus. It's like, that's not our customer. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the person who's like, man, I resonate with what you're saying. I resonate with your teachings. I think you can help me, right? And that's greater than the sum of these fools. But what does that have to do with your trade and your first trade? It's like, you have to know that there's a greater purpose to you trading. You signed up because you saw a way of getting out of debt, a way to help your family, a way to buy your dream car, dream house, put your kids through college. You can't put that same goal and dream on the scale and say that's equivalent with the fear of losing $1,000 or the equivalent with the fear of making your first mistake. So you telling me buying your dream house, sending your kids to school, changing your financial legacy, getting out of debt, you're telling me the price of that is being scared of losing $1,000? Like, that don't even make sense. But we do it every single day. We tap out of the market. We tap out of learning this industry because we give way more power to looking dumb to people who we really don't even care about, our quote unquote friends, which we don't even know how many of them are real friends anyway. But we give so much power to that and so much power to possibly losing $1,000 that we don't even give power to, like what me and Antonio says. Like, I remember like saying like, if this, similar to Antonio, when I said your story similar to mine, I was like, if this doesn't work, I'm like, I'm back in the store selling cell phones. I'll make another $1,000 commission check, whatever. Give me 30 days. I'll make another commission check of 1,000. I'm back. So I was like, if it don't work, I already knew the worst case scenario. But I was like, man, if this works, the car, the Ferrari, like having that car, living in this house, all this, I dreamed about this stuff like 20 years ago when I was 20. You know, I was like, man, if this works one day, I'm going to have a what do they do house. I'm going to drive one of the sickest cars. And when people be like, how do you pay for a car note that ridiculous? I'm going to be able to say, I don't pay for it. Either the stock market or my business does. Like, that's how I pay for it. I'm not working 40 hours to pay a ridiculous car note. And I knew like one day that would be the opportunity. And like, that was like pushing me, not like, but what if I lose $1,000? I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go back to work next week or tomorrow. Like, pretty simple. You go see me at the mall bugging you when you walk in. Like, who's your cell phone carrier? We got some great deals over here at Sprint. Right. Like, I knew that was the worst case scenario, right? So it's like, I guess here's my one word or my one phrase for people. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. And you need to focus on what could be versus the little thousand. If you lose $1,000, let me let you in on the secret. You still broke. Like, if $1,000 means that much to you and you lose it, newsflash, you still broke. Like, you broke. You broke. So you're like, oh, 1,000 ain't changing nobody life. Nobody life one time. If somebody be like 1,000 would change my life, I would argue it wouldn't. It might buy you some food, but what you gonna do next month? What you gonna do next month? You broke. You back broke next month. So like a one-time 1,000, 2,000 ain't changing nobody's life. So why do we give it so much power, right? It's like, I'm still broke, but $1,000 has the potential for you to never have to worry about $1,000 again. And that's what I want people thinking about. Antonio, one word close. What should people be thinking about?
Yep. The risk of not getting involved is greater than the risk of losing $1,000. That's what I'd say.
And plus, I like how you spent the money already. You came in thinking the 1,000 was already lost. I like that. You came in like, look, I'm willing to put this away for 10 years. So it's already spent. I love it. Michaela, what do the people need to take away from this one, from the female perspective?
Well, I think going along with that is just making sure, whatever you do decide to trade, and it's not, your life isn't dependent on that money. So it's not going towards bills. Like Antonio said, I knew that wasn't going to be due for rent or whatever. So you have this money that you can use. And then, as we discussed, just your mindset of changing how you view losses and wins, and gaining the right education and experiences so you can lose small and win a little bit bigger. So that's what I think.
There it is. Just get in the game. Get off the sidelines and get in the game. One last closing thought that I had. Even when I was losing money, I felt like I was in a different class of people. Even when I'm like, I'm down 1,000 in the market. They like, ooh, you in the market? It was like, I felt like a boss just even saying I'm down 1,000. I'm like, yeah, I'm down a G. You like, ooh, that boy down a G. Like, people was excited for me that I was down a G. And I was excited because I was in the game though. It's like, I was proud to even be playing the game to say I'm down a grand. Does that make sense? It just felt like I was doing something different. Even being down was more prestigious than them not being in the market, but they're not down 1,000. Me being down was better than not being in, because I was in the game. It was so powerful. Anyway, make sure you hit the like, subscribe button if you listen to this on YouTube. Leave a comment below, whether it's iTunes, no matter where you're watching. I want to hear from you guys. What's holding you back from placing your first trade? Or if you've gotten on the other side of placing your first trade, share with somebody what was the fear you were going through and how you overcame it. Let's have a conversation in the comment section, and we'll see you on the next episode.